there's a time between our youth and that transition into something more. A time of growing from the tenderness into all the awkward parts that are ourselves, going through our older youth into adolescence and our young adulthood. And that split moment when we decide to become a parent, whether consciously or unconsciously. From that anxious moment of anticipation to all that comes after, the hopes, the dreams, the visions. Those moments of our changing body, that wonder potentially that we feel or worry as we start to see our form shift. And to the moment we hold that baby firstly in our arms, and everything changes. One thing is for certain, regardless of whether the child that you carry ever takes that first step, whether that life comes to fruition, or whether you raise a child that is not your own, the moment that you decided to take another life into your care, you became a mother. And so with that, we're going to get into Catherine's story about motherhood. It's very poignant, very cutting, very open. And we ask that you sit back, enjoy, and that potentially our questions will lead you to have questions with your own mothers, with your own grandmothers, with the women that raised you. And let's get to it. All right. Well, welcome to Conversations and Coffee. And today I have with me a beautiful young woman and mother who will be going by the name of Catherine today. And we'd like to welcome Catherine to our show. I'm going to have her introduce herself here in a moment. My name is Linnea Lubin, and I am the founder of Red Tent OV here in Norfolk, Virginia, as well as with my daughter, Lisanne, who is also a co-founder. And we wanted to do these conversations and coffee pieces on motherhood, especially on this Mother's Day weekend. And we're really glad to have Catherine with us today to go in depth and really have a conversation and dialogue between the women of our group. So, Catherine, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi. I I just gotta say, I always panic at these questions talking about yourself. um, but I am local. I've moved around a little bit in my childhood. I am a Navy child. My dad was an officer in the Navy, so we moved around a little bit in my younger childhood, but mostly Virginia Beach and Norfolk is where I call home, where I did all my schooling. So I'm very comfortable and familiar with the area. Um, I would say the first thing that popped into my head when I was thinking about, okay, my background, like, what do I do? I felt a little bit of everything and a whole lot of nothing. I feel like I have tried my hand at almost any job you can think of, and I have done lots of different school programs. But at the end of the day, I have mostly just focused on being a mother now.
Yeah. I want to thank you for being so open and honest about that. And I think that is one of the things that we find about motherhood. It is all consuming,
Yes.
especially in that young stage of motherhood, which leads me just to ask a question that's a little off the cuff. So please don't let me start like that. But how old is your youngest right now?
She is just about to turn 7 on the 23rd.
Okay.
She's basically 7.
Okay. And then your
Wait,
littlest.
did you say youngest or oldest?
I said youngest. Youngest.
That just clicked in my brain. I was like, wait, she didn't ask oldest. My youngest, so Sophia, sweet little Sophia, she is a year and a half, about 20 months right now, I think.
So you have a 1.5-year-old and a
Mhm.
7-year-old,
Yeah.
and they are at completely different spectrums of where they're at, right? And different needs and wants. So I just have to say thank you for doing this interview, having a child so young. And we know that can sometimes be a problem, especially when you're doing things for yourself, like red tent. So, which leads us in to talk a little bit about red tent. How long have you been involved in the red tent movement?
I would say I kind of watched from the sidelines for a good year or so before I decided to finally join in. Lizanne had brought me into the Facebook groups. I can't remember exactly the year, but I would say through my pregnancy and after I'd had Sophia, I would say that whole like year and a half, I was watching the group, curious about the group, definitely supporting it. And then that first retreat weekend, that was when I fully jumped in and actually joined you guys.
Oh, that was a good time to join, because I think for me that was one of my favorite memories of Red Tent OV was our women's retreat, because we had all of that time together, really to deep dive and do the things that we needed to do for self restoration. Which leads us into, what is a memory you have that sticks out in your mind about Red Tent the most?
Um, I would say it's not even, I mean, I have tons of fond memories already, but I would say the biggest thing for me was more the feeling I got from that first day of spending with you guys. After I was leaving that night, I was just buzzing with so much happiness and relaxation and just this energy that I had not felt in so long. I was giddy by the time I came home. I was just excited that I shared all of this with this group of women, and I was just surprised at how much I felt after leaving.
That is awesome. I am so glad that you shared that. I have a memory of you from that event. And it was a very beautiful memory. So don't think it's weird, but you were curled up in that chair, just in peace. And you look so peaceful and so safe. And I know one of the things for young mothers is lack of rest.
Yes.
Did you feel like you got some of the rest that you needed that weekend?
Absolutely. Definitely. I think that's part of what got me hooked.
Yeah, and that's one of the nice things about the deep dive weekends, especially the retreats. And I think where we're going in the future is we would like to make those more often, not just a yearly retreat, because a year is an awful long time to wait
Yeah.
for that deep reparation.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all feeling that right now.
Yeah.
We're all feeling that right
And I
now.
think when you have yourself kind of like booked off for a whole weekend, you're giving yourself more permission to like fully lean into relaxing, because it's like your planned mini vacation almost.
Yeah. And one of the things I've noticed, especially since moving back to the States, and I knew it before I left, but seeing it then in perspective of living in Europe, living in Germany, which runs a little bit slower pace, coming back, I realized just how frantic the American lifestyle is. It's a very frantic, very fast paced. There's not a lot of holidays. Most people in Europe take regular holidays, and those holidays are month long,
Mm.
and work supports that. And pregnancy, maternity leave is a year to sometimes longer in most European states. So there's a lot more support around that type of thing.
Mhm.
So I want to thank you for answering these first questions. So now we're going to start to get into a little bit deeper questions that are more personal. First off, I do have to ask you, how long have you been married?
We are about to celebrate 4 years on the 31st.
That is awesome. I am so excited for you. And when you came into this, did you know that you wanted to have kids at the very beginning? Was it something that you planned?
Yes, but I definitely knew I didn't want them right away. We waited and kind of planned for. I say that we kind of planned for Sophia, but there are definitely some bumps along the road where a couple of unplanned pregnancies happened. But ultimately, it wasn't until Sophia came, and we had, we sat down and decided for her to come. So
That's an awesome thing. And I know that was off of the topic a little bit, but our motherhood journey really says a lot about where we're at. And also other mothers are going through a similar journey pieces. It might not be exactly the same, but it has pieces that are. And so when did you become a mother? Now that's kind of a loaded question because you have a daughter from him and
Mhm.
from a previous marriage, and then you have Sophia. Is that
Mhm.
correct? Okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm asking a question that might be harder to answer than we think. So when did you become a mother?
Physically, I became a mother with Isla back in 2016. Although so she was born in May 2016. So I got pregnant in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, life changing, just truly life changing. I was young, not planned. It changed my whole world. I would say though, honestly, I did not feel comfortable in my motherhood until well into Sophia
Yeah.
growing. I would say when I got a balance on the two of them, I feel comfortable as being like a mother right now.
Yes.
I would say it took me that journey until kind of right now that I feel I'm doing this and I'm doing it well.
To our oldest children out there, we thank you more than you could possibly know for helping us along this motherhood journey, because you taught us a lot about motherhood and what it meant to be a parent.
Mhm.
And I was not the same person that I was with my oldest, Lisanne, as I was with my middle daughter, Clarissa. And I
Mhm.
wasn't the same with Clarissa as I was with Samuel, and Samuel with Majda. So
Yeah.
each one of our children offers us this opportunity to grow into a new self. Do
Mhm.
you feel that each child changes the way that you parent based on their personality as well?
Absolutely. That must play a part in it because I, I struggled so much with Isla, and she truly was a completely different baby. And Sophia was already so peaceful and so calm as a baby. I feel like it was easier for me to kind of mirror that energy, you know? So of course, this complicated mom guilt feelings then. The amount of time I thought to myself, why couldn't I be like this with Isla? Like why couldn't me and Isla's, first shared experiences be this happy and peaceful. But
That could be a whole 3-month journey on conversations, this mother guilt. And that's one thing. If you're out there and you're going through that, I first want to say you need to stop, take a breath, and let go of that, because we each do the best we can in the moment, at the present moment, with the tools we had during that time period. And when I say tools, I'm talking about emotional tools, financial tools, spiritual tools, physical tools, all of those tools, because we're not the same people that we were 7 years ago, 10 years ago, which gets me into, what decade did you have your first child?
so the 2010s.
2010s.
Yep.
Okay. Because decades do determine a little bit about our parenting style as well. My first child was in the 90s. So that's a little bit different parenting style than now. And for myself, I was born at the the height of the hippie generation. So different types of parenting for myself as well, but for a Midwest family. And that changes how that was interpreted as well.
Yeah.
Do you think the time that you were a young mother affected your experience as a mother now?
Yeah. I think it taught me quite a few tough lessons that I really took to heart with Sophia. Certain methods I knew I didn't want to try again, or just kind of even remembering the good of what I did experience with Isla and knowing how to focus more on that with Sophia then. Yeah. But there was a lot of more tough lessons learned with being really young with Isla and just going through those first experiences of relationships as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we're different people in the beginning of the relationship. And many of us, we've talked about this, especially when we did the real love section on the Disney love. You know what I'm talking about? When we first come into those romantic relationships, we may not be in the same frame of mind, because most of us grew up with Disney, and we grew up with it's just going to be all good. We're going to meet the perfect
absolutely
someone, and everything's going to be blah 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 blah. After that,
And so, I will say, I even repeated some of those experiences then with Stephen and Sophia, and that's been a big catalyst for more growth, like you mentioned, growing this time, because it's like, okay, I thought I was better prepared. I thought I wasn't going to make those same mistakes again, but they're happening again. So what is it that I need to change? Like, what is it that I need to really tackle this time so this did not keep happening?
But you may have stumbled on a magic recipe and you may not realize it, is that this life is an experiential journey. And if you can start to remember that it's an experiential journey, there's less guilt attached to it, because each person, I kind of feel like each person comes into our life for a time and a purpose, and they're there to support that growth. And so when we realize that they're there to support that growth, we can let go of that guilt trap.
Yeah.
And understand that we're all in this little pool called life, working through our humanness to be a better picture of that, or a different picture the next time. So I think that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that really deep and profound thing that sometimes it's not easy, and we have to try new things.
Yeah.
So what was your first vision of motherhood before you went into it?
Definitely an idealized, kind of that perfect picture of, I'll share with you. When I was pregnant with Isla, I had this one vision. I had a favorite song. It's like kind of like a slow, sweet folk song. And I just had visions of me sweetly rocking her singing this song along with her, and we're going to be sharing these beautiful moments of like music and, you know, just loving each other. And I think that was the most that I was picturing, was all the sweet moments.
Yeah, I know. I have that perfect picture. There was an SNL short that I watched the other day about motherhood and how the child had this vision of it and the mother remembers the reality of it.
Yeah.
It's very eye-opening. So I'm going to stop here for just a moment
Mhm.
and just give you a moment to have a break. What surprised you the most after or even during pregnancy or labor or delivery? I'll just let you choose a point or a moment.
Mhm.
But what surprised you the most?
I would say for Isla, my first, I think the most surprising thing was I didn't have immediate feelings of joy after I had her. I actually had this immediate panic. I remember crying in the hospital bed because I realized nothing was ever going to be the same now. I was like, I was saying it out loud to my partner at the time. I was like, everything is going to be different now. Like everything has changed. And it was scary, actually. But with Sophia, I had such a different experience. So the whole experience with her, I feel like, was surprising because it was, I had her natural at home. And I think being able to do that, that was the most surprising thing to me. Like I did that, and that was crazy. Like it was so painful, but also not as painful, I feel like, as I was worried it was going to be. I was able to do it. And I think that it really gave me this sense of awe and appreciation of a woman's body going through that experience with Sophia. And I felt way more euphoric after her birth, recovering at home and doing it myself. I had more immediate feelings of like bonding and happiness.
So you've touched on some really big things for me, especially as a past childbirth educator. You talked about some normal parts of the birthing process. You know, that very first biological birth changes women. There's something that happens in transition. And for those who don't know what transition is that point from that really um, big labor going into this intense labor. And in transition, women go through so many emotions and they want to stop. And oftentimes, this is the most difficult time. And then, right after transition, it goes into the pushing stage. And there's something that happens in that time period where women literally lose part of them. It's like a shedding of an old skin and a rebirthing of a new skin. And that panic that you're talking about can be very real, and it's a normal part of pregnancy and delivery, especially for your first child, because you are having this experience with another individual, but it's still your experience. Okay. And that's something that we have to understand. And there's multiple experiences happening here at this moment. And you are definitely able to say that maybe you didn't feel as in control the first time. But what you did talk about, which I also thought was beautiful, is in the second of birthing, you had more control over your birth experience. Would you say that having more control over your birthing experience gave you more peace?
Absolutely. It was scary to have it kind of be all in my control, because I just didn't know what to expect and I wasn't sure if I could handle it. But I would say doing the at-home birth with Sophia was healing to my first experience with Isla, because I did not enjoy that hospital stay at all. I did not enjoy the way the nurses intervened. I did not enjoy my recovery. I didn't feel like I really got a recovery there at all. Yeah, there's just a lot that went on with that birth that I always felt really dissatisfied with. And having such a satisfying experience with Sophia was really healing.
Thank you for sharing that. It's really beautiful. And that is something that each individual that comes into our life allows us the opportunity. They allow us to heal past traumas. And I would have to say that that first experience was traumatic for you. And so God love our firstborns, because we really need to give them, we really need to give them a hug, because I swear that our firstborns are special human beings, because they are sometimes our greatest teachers, are they not?
Yes, they teach us so much.
Yeah. So I just want to say that, because I'm overwhelmed with emotion now too, because my first experience with my own daughter was fairly traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
And that will come out at a different time with her permission. So I just want to say thank you for sharing that really in-depth look. And well, I'm getting ready to head into some sometimes difficult territory. And our mother-daughter relationships are sometimes the most dynamic, the most unsure, and the most wrought with neuroses that there possibly can be, because that primal relationship is incredibly important. And so I'm going to ask you, what is your memory of your mother?
It's two-sided. I know she was very involved with my upbringing and schooling. She was very hands-on with everything. But with that, she was very controlling. Unfortunately, very emotionally unavailable. She did not cuddle. She really did not kiss or hug us. She was very critical, and it really taints a lot of what she did well as a mother, because there's a lot that she did well, but her own wounds kind of scar the rest of that kind of mothering experience. It was difficult.
So I want to say thank you for sharing that, because I know that it is hard. And just so that our mothers know, there is no offense to that, because we are given a whole different tool set for healing than our parents were given a tool set for healing. We have, the only healing that we potentially had in the past was the opportunity to maybe go to church or go to the synagogue or go to a temple. That was it. That was our only maybe connection with healing. Because if I think back to when my mother was raising us, psychology was kind of it was something that you didn't do. And people had really big, it wasn't until President Kennedy's daughter ended up in an asylum that changes really happened with mental health care.
Yeah.
And so getting that mental health care was not something that we had. And a lot of our circular relations, where we would have people that we could talk to besides just the therapist as well too. Those weren't necessarily there. Those social circles, people didn't get as deep as we do now. There wasn't yoga, there wasn't sound therapy, there wasn't all these types of things going on for the vast majority of our mothers before us.
Yeah.
And this was something that I noticed when I went to my very first women's conference in Mankato, Minnesota. Lisanne was just 6 at that time when we went to that. I watched all these older women dancing, and they were these big, strong women just dancing this very primal dance because they had to fight their way out of the darkness to get the things that they wanted and the shifts that we now are seeing for us. So that being said, I wanted to put that out there because we need to understand that there is no blame for us to them and no blame for us to our own kids. You understand? Because we're each doing the best we can with what we have. So thank you for sharing that. How do you think that memory affected your motherhood? Prepared you, made you question it, etc.?
I think there was definitely a lot of, well, one, it surprised me how much I absolutely adore my children, and I love loving on them and cuddling them. I have always had a very attachment parenting style that is completely different than what I grew up with, but not even in an intentional way. Like, that's just what felt natural to me. I wanted to be glued to them, so to say. But there's definitely been things that I've known I don't really see the point in repeating, lessons that I'm like, well, I'm definitely going to do that different. I'm definitely going to not force that issue. And things that I think that really helped shape me growing up that I have tried to mirror. And thankfully, my mom is still very close to me and in my grandchildren's lives, because there's just some lessons I think you can only learn from the older women in your family, and she does that well. And I hope my children can learn some of the things that I can't pass on, but she can still pass on. Yeah.
Thank you. And for many of you that may not know, many of our mothers grew up in that Dr. Spock era. And I'm not talking about pointy-eared Vulcans. I'm not talking about that type of Vulcan, that type of Spock. I am talking about Dr. Spock, who was a psychologist. And he had a way of parenting that was very hands-off and very emotionally detached and very scheduled. And so many of our parents grew up with that kind of, today we have what to expect when you're expecting, and we have all these other, books out there for parenting, and it's just different time periods, different ways of parenting. And we have to understand that when we look back, what was available for our parents in the past. So now we're going to talk about something more positive. What's your favorite memory of your mother?
She used to sing songs for us at bedtime. And that, to me, there's actually, I could actually gush about. I do have so many favorite memories. There's one day I particularly remember. It was a rainy day. It was a stormy day. And she took us to the library. And I just remember thoroughly enjoying, like, picking out books with my mom, reading books with my mom. And we came home and she made homemade Play-Doh with us as well. And it was just like a fantastic rainy day. And that is the majority of my good memories with her. Like I said, she was so involved in like school projects, dressing up, holidays, doing crafts, doing baking with us. Like, that was really always the moments where she shined and she loved doing with us. So I have tons of happy memories of her just doing those type of activities with us. She always would sing and always read a book for us.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. And part of this conversation is being really real. we have to understand that we are going to be making mistakes. Our parents are going to be making mistakes, and our children are going to make mistakes in parenting as they go along their journey as well too. But we're also going to do a lot of things right. And so those, I call those things the things that stick out in your mind the most: rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. Because those are things that are quality. If they left a lasting impression on you like that, more than likely they're going to leave a lasting impression on your children as well. So we take a small break for a moment, and Catherine said something really interesting. She said, I wish I could do this conversation with my mom too and find out the things that she felt and thought, how it would be very interesting, because I'm going to be doing this conversation dialogue with my mother as well as soon as I can get her hooked up technologically. And I think these conversations are really important to have because traditionally women's knowledge and women's history was passed down orally. And that oral tradition of understanding is vital in women's lives. And when we don't share our stories, when we don't have these conversations with our aunties, our grandmothers, our mothers, our great grandmothers, the women that were mentors in our life, we miss out on all of the stuff that they've already done, all the mistakes they've made and learned from, and all of those deeper feelings that they've never potentially had an opportunity to share with anybody, and so it's important. And I know that the older our parents become, sometimes the easier that is to have those conversations, because it's easier for me now to be more blunt and more real the older I've gotten. And that's just something that comes with age. So thank you for bringing that piece up.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have support around your parenting? And I'm going to talk about that in a couple parts, with family, friends, community, even your country.
Off the bat, no. I would say, well, we know how America doesn't support our families. I chose to leave the workforce after I had Isla, but even if I had stayed, I don't think I would have gotten more than a few weeks of some time off, and it would not have been paid. So,
yeah.
And my partner at the time, he also, I think he was offered 4 weeks of time off after we had Isla, but after 2 weeks, I think he was called back in anyway. And I think that's what only Stephen got as well. I think about 2 weeks maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That
recovery time is not really valued for the women or the fathers after having and I would say community wise too, we've kind of internalized that feeling of the workforce certainly doesn't value that recovery, and I feel like kind of our community has taken on that feeling as well, that you get a little bit of time after you first have your baby, but after that you need to be back up into your routines, back to cooking, back to cleaning, back to getting out there, and kind of carrying on as if nothing has changed.
Yeah. Birth that baby, get back in there.
Yeah.
Be the busy worker bee.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So this is so foreign to our indigenous, our original indigenous, or our healed indigenous ways of community and support, because indigenous wise, especially within Lakota culture, there was the 4 cycles of pregnancy, and that last cycle was after the baby was born, and the community supported that young family, and the spouse was the one who took care of both mother and child.
Mm-hmm.
And that was considered part of the pregnancy. Traditionally, most other cultures, we are actually in specifications, we fall into third world category as far as our care for And it's sad to say for maternity leave and also for infant mortality rates are very high in America compared to other countries.
Yeah.
Just because there's so much emphasis on, are you done with that now? It's kind of like, that's the conversation. Are you done with that now? Can you get back to being productive? That's kind of how I feel that we are treated, because overseas in Europe, the average maternity leave is 1 year to 2 years. In Japan, they can have up to 3 years. And these are paid maternity leaves.
Yeah.
And and it doesn't limit the amount of women that are hired either. So there's none of this, because there is this belief system that when we bring new life into our community, that helps to support our community in the future. And so that could be its own topic on its own. So,
absolutely, yeah.
So thank you for delving into that that difficult section that I think deserves its own conversation around it.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit, so I'm not going to ask this question again about what the average maternity leave time was, because you already answered that. And you already said what time that you had as well. And it was about 4 weeks. Is that what you said?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I had a young mother too, even when I was teaching at the college, Lakota College. Her boss at the gas station expected her to be back working at the gas station 4 days after delivery.
Mm-hmm. I've read and heard plenty of stories as well. Just, after your hospital stay, some women had to go right back to work. Still bleeding and everything.
So this is what leads to postpartum depression. This is what leads to reactive attachment disorder with children and mothers.
Mm-hmm.
And we wonder why our society is literally bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, really, why it's hurting.
A huge ripple effect, because also, we've, at least in the previous decades, I know we touched on how the parenting styles have changed, but there was more support for families. And I think it's like income wise, and the fact that being a stay-at-home mom did used to be a very normal choice and a very normal kind of pace of life for most families. And now we're not able to support the stay-at-home mom anymore, that family life anymore. And we have no maternity leave time, and everybody's working crazy. And so like I feel like now we're seeing all those kind of like decades kind of catching up to us of no more family units, and less breastfeeding, less stay-at-home moms, less all of that, being able to kind of nurture your child for those first few years of life.
Yep.
And we're seeing everybody grow up now those ways, and I don't think we're having a good time.
I don't think so either. Yeah. And part of that is because of inflation. We've had the incomes that our parents made are not worth the same of what our incomes are. Mm-hmm. That's why we have this shrinking middle class. You have 2 people working in the workforce, but they're not even making anywhere close to what it costs to live and have things in this current society. Mm-hmm. And where we used to be able to do it with one income, we can't do it with one income. And so there's a lot going on before anybody gets too high on feminists out there, that somehow we may have done that to ourselves. It's not, because women have been working in the workforce for a long time across the entire globe, and they're not treated the way that they are here. We have to remember during World War II, it was women in the workforce that helped to make sure that our men were taken care of overseas, and still managed to keep up the house and take care of the kids and do all those types of things that had to be done. So, and people also forget about the work of motherhood. It is a full-time job in itself, one that we don't get paid for, but our communities and societies get the value of later when we raise a decent human being. And
Absolutely.
that's something to be said as well too. In the future we'll have more discussions around that as well. So
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you, what was the biggest challenge so far you have faced as a mother?
I've been trying to think on this one, and I would say the biggest the biggest challenge, I don't think it comes from any external factor. I think it's internal. I think that being a mother challenges you to either kind of grow, grow and love, kind of grow and learn, kind of to be faced with your own kind of shadow self, maybe, talking in that terms. I think you're challenged by either facing all of that and embracing it with love and learning, or I think it can almost take away yourself, you know? Being a mom can almost, you can either feel like your whole life and body and mind has kind of been stolen from you all your time, or you could, like I said, you can kind of embrace that all and learn how to change with it all. I think it can be such an amazing opportunity to become that higher self person that you want to be. I think it really does give you so many lessons and mirror reflections, and it can be such a crazy awesome tool to learning about yourself and changing for the better. Or it can be a very slippery slope into kind of feeling the darkness of your mind.
Thank you so much for going really in depth in that. And I know that oftentimes we have talked about this before, that our biggest struggle isn't with the outside, it is with the inside.
Mm-hmm.
All those things that we've hidden, and oftentimes people talk about the shadow and people think it's a really dark thing. But as you learned and we talked about before, the shadow is just everything under that surface.
Yeah.
And it's all the stuff all the emotions that we have. And there's a lot of gifts down in there too. Because when we have to do, that's why they call it deep diving.
Yeah.
When you're taking those deep dives, you're going down to find out what types of pearls are hanging out in that ocean, that subconscious, and what things that you can take from that. So thank you for sharing that, because I would have to agree with you that the hardest battles are all the mental ones that we have within our head about our parenting.
Absolutely. And I think circling back to kind of what you were touching on earlier, how previous generations of women in our family, I think, it used to be passed down. And I think, there used to be more connection and lessons learned and stuff. Like there probably could be, it probably doesn't have to be so hard and learn so much once you become a mother yourself, if we were still talking to our own mothers and our grandmothers about their experiences and their lessons learned.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's very like a solo journey now these days. And there's a lot that goes on when you become a mom.
I love that.
Yeah.
Welcome to your solo flight. May you pass. May you pass. I mean, that's what it does feel like, because we have cut ourselves off from the circle of community, and we would call that the broken hoop. Okay. So that broken hoop, and in Indigenous society, that circle, that hoop is really important. Changleska Wakang, which is that holy circle, once that is broken, it's just time before everything else falls apart. And there's this passage that says, one of a nation is beaten when its women's hearts are on the ground.
Mm.
And so that's something to think about. We really have to stop beating ourselves up, stop beating our parents up, stop beating everybody up that's, on this parenting journey, because we're all doing the best we can with what tools that we have or what we've been left with, which is sometimes scraps. And I just wanted to share that, because I think it's important as we're getting ready to close out this conversation. I have a question on what's your biggest victory?
Like on motherhood?
Yes.
I think that I feel like I'm a little still too in the thick of it to know yet what might be my biggest victory. I would just say being so happy being a mother and seeing my own children so happy, that's got to be a victory for right now. I'm thoroughly enjoying it, and I think they are too. So I think that's our victory.
I think you just touched on a really key point. When you're in the thick of it, motherhood feels like a thick soup of a journey.
Mhm.
And if we don't stop every once in a while and take a look at what we have done right, we're going to compile those problems and look at all the things that we didn't feel we did right. And notice I said didn't feel we did right, because what we might have considered a mistake was actually potentially maybe the best thing that could have happened in that moment. So celebrate those small victories every week. What was something that you accomplished? Maybe even daily, maybe even hourly if you're really struggling. What was I able to do with this time that I had and the tools that I had in my possession at this moment? So what's your favorite memory?
Oh, I'm not sure.
That's okay. And I think that goes back to being in the thick of it.
Yeah, there's still so much kind of flying at me every day. My kids are still so young. Some days, every day feels like an awesome day with them, and then some days it's just like, you're trudging through it all. So yeah, I'm not quite sure what I'll look back on yet and be like, that was a favorite day.
So here's a good meditation for you and for other mothers out there that might want to try it. This is a good opportunity to maybe sit down and close your eyes and be in a quiet spot and try to pull up a memory, because those memories, those favorite memories, are also what leads us down that unconditional love path. And I remember when we did the pink light meditation.
Yes.
Okay. So the whole point of the pink light meditation is to find a love point or a love memory in your past that you can build more experiential love from. So this is a good potential to maybe teach that to a broader group in the future. So thank you for saying that, even though you didn't quite have it right now. And this is why sometimes meditations are hard. It takes us a while to see through all of those mental images and classify them like that. Oh, this is a good memory. This is something that opened my heart, or this is something that made me feel positive as a mother. So last and final question. What advice would you give to new mothers or mothers still in the thick of it?
It's been said before, but I think it cannot be oversaid. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Ask for all the help you need. It's never too much. I think we always have that feeling of we're asking for too much help, but it's not, especially as a new mom, especially as a first-time mom. You need breaks. You do need help. You need somebody to come so you can nap, or you can just stare at a blank wall, whatever it is you need to do. Take a bath, take a shower. eat food, whatever it is you need. It might seem like, oh, that's too much to ask somebody to come all the way out just so I can do that. But it's not. Ask, ask, ask. Ask for all that help.
Exactly. Thank you for saying that. And if you, the viewer and listener, ever find yourself in a situation where that's what you need, I would highly recommend you start to make a list of who you can count on to be those types of support. And if that list is empty, you need to start joining groups. You need to start getting involved in women's pieces or family groups. And that's kind of what Red Tent OV is all about, as repatriation and the subgroups that we're trying to form from that. We are trying to do young mothers collectives where mothers share play dates and do those types of things because we know that we need that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And my heart goes out to you if you're really struggling for who that you can tag out with to say, hey, come give me a break, because I don't have all the answers for you. But I don't want you to feel like you're alone. And if you feel you are alone, please feel free to message us, leave a comment. We'll try to do our very best to get back to you. You can connect with us on our Facebook page as well, House of the Divine Feminine, which is our public space. And if you're in the Norfolk OV area, you can come join the Red Tent OV, and we meet monthly. There's only been a few times that we have canceled or taken breaks, and we tend to support each other, and we're working on creating a very circular connection where we support and facilitate collectively. So thank you for this deep dive into motherhood, Catherine, and for the time that you gave up of your day, because as a mother, for me, time was the most precious resource I had.
Yes.
So,
well, I really enjoyed this. Thank you for getting me to think on these things. And like I said, I think I'm very excited. Mother's Day is coming up, and I was going to already spend it with my own mother. And we have my paternal grandmother here that we were going to go see as well. So I think these are some interesting questions to kind of ask everybody.
yeah, and I am listing these. These will be listed on neradahouse.org for something that you can do to ask your mom. They'll be listed as a free PDF that you can download and maybe take them to your mom's house or your grandma's house. Because if we don't ask about these things or get these stories now, we might never have the opportunity to have them.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So happy Mother's Day. Happy Grandmother's Day. Happy Daughter's Day. Happy Son's Day, because motherhood is what gives all life.
Mm-hmm.
Without it, where would the world be?
Yep.
So thank you for sharing your time. Give Sophia, and it is a big hug for me, and I look forward to talking to you again.
As do I.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.